Hello and welcome to Smooth Sailing Conversations. I am Shaniqua Dupree and today's guest is Chief Beezy, retired. And I'm so excited to hear the advice that she gives and different ways that military members can transition throughout the Navy. So we'll go ahead and jump straight in. Can you share about your military background?
Yes. So when I came into the military, it was 1998. So just to give everybody a sense of how long ago that was, right, 24 years ago. At the time when I came in, we were just starting Desert Storm, right? So things were going as far as we actually had force protection condition alpha. That's something no one's seen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually a kind of an interesting thing to note, because after that, we would go into the bombing as far as overseas, and then that would change everything. We would, after, 1999, when the bombing occurred overseas, we actually went like straight to Delta, and then we never went back to Alpha again. Mm-hmm. So if people that are familiar with those times, if they're that old, back from that far ago, then they will understand sort of like the generational look that I was having. We were having dungarees at the time. You don't see dungarees anymore. And something interesting to note is that we actually didn't have what's now in boot camp, which is the ship. Instead, we had the Marlin Spike. So we didn't have what was actually everybody goes up on top of right now, which is actually emulating what happened on the USS Cole. Interestingly enough, my husband's actually stationed on the USS Cole right now, and deployed. So that's just to give a sense of where I come from. And I am also 46 years old. So for those who are just trying to see where I come from, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. And I have I'm recently retired after 24 years, and I am married to a senior chief intelligence specialist in the Navy.
Okay, what is your rate, or what was your rate?
I was what used to be called radioman. Now it's called information systems technician. A lot of your audience is probably quite familiar with that one. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did for all my career.
Okay, and when did you leave active duty?
Actually, it was just last month. In fact, April 30th is when I've just gone. So I am freshly retired.
Congratulations. Yeah,
it's a good time.
So really quick, can you do a rundown of your duty stations, your career, kind of like where you've been?
Yes. So I was, after a boot camp, I reported over to NICTAM's LANT in Norfolk, Virginia. I would actually go there about twice more. Those were all because of miscarriages or pregnancies. I want us to focus on this because this will become part of my topic in the near future here. After that, I went to the USNS Patuxent. That would actually ultimately become my first ship. A lot of people say that's not a ship. If anybody ever gets stationed at a USNS, it is a real ship. It's just that it is USNS. It's a merchant marine vessel. Mm-hmm. So that's fine. Then after that, I would go back to NICTAM's LANT. After that, I've been stationed over at JMF St. Maughan, United Kingdom. That doesn't actually exist anymore. That's decommissioned. I've been to the USS Seattle. That is no longer in existence either. That's an AO83. That is a oiler supply ship. That's no longer exists. It's decommed. I went overseas again, and I went to NCTS Naples, Italy. I came back. I went to USS Nassau. That was before it was decommissioned, so everybody understands, because that was 2009 when it decommissioned. I was gone 2008. Mm-hmm. I went to Comm Sublant. That's actually where I got selected for Chief Petty Officer. I left there and I went to Net Warcom in Suffolk, Virginia. I left there and I went to Hellmyron Squadron 15, which is HM15, otherwise known as. Mm-hmm. If you're noting so far, I'm pretty much staying in the Norfolk, Hampton Roads region. That's where I'm at all the time. And then the last place I went to was FCC 10th Fleet in Suffolk.
Okay, mm-hmm. I'm glad you mentioned that you're staying in you stayed in that region, because when people are like getting into the military, or they're kind of wondering like, why is the Navy not sending me over to the West Coast and to the East Coast and over to the Middle East and over to Asia? It's because usually it's more expensive. This is just my opinion and what I've noticed, but it's more expensive to send one person all around the world to different stations when they could stay right there locally. So for the people who are watching and you decide you want to join the Navy, or you are on your first tour, you're ready to go somewhere else, the reason that your detailer is only giving you options for things that are close to where you already are is because it's a lot cheaper for that to happen.
Hi guys, before we jump into the rest of this video, I would like to share with you all that I do have a book that I published this past February called I Am Profitable, a guide to discovering how you can turn your experiences into multiple income streams. You can find it on Amazon in paperback or Kindle. Now back to the show.
But okay, so my next
That's
question
fair.
is, what's the hardest thing you had to face while serving, and how did you overcome?
So this is something that I was actually just thinking about this afternoon. Was a friend of mine and I were actually chitty chatting about it the other day. Is it is important to think about this, is that when you are married and you have a especially when you have a mill to mill relationship, particularly when you have a mill to mill relationship, it is important to note that by the way that I've noted in a lot of my peer group notes that one of you will ultimately end up sort of becoming not the most successful, but you will probably have the opportunities that the other person doesn't. I don't think it's a female male thing. Some people might believe that. There is a lot of gender biases, I think, that still exist in today's Navy. It's just important to just recognize that and to know that we're all still moving forward with that. It still has work to be done. But the hardest thing I noted was how much more I would have to like give up, maybe I would have to be the one that stays on. If I'm the one that's staying on watch, I still have to figure out the childcare, right? Because I'm the one who's at home at shore duty, and the husband, my husband in this case, he's underway. Mill to mill relationships are always shore, or that's usually the preferences. It's one's at shore and one's at sea. So if I was at shore, even though people would think that's a nice deal, right? It is a nice deal, but you will be still having to figure it out because you're still stuck with the parenting now at home. They're the ones going underway. So because of these these sometimes I call them missed opportunities to do the more challenging duty stations, I felt, and I think other people feel that way, is that they would have to push out a little bit more than their spouse would, right? Because they're having to make up the difference. They're doing what they got to do to parent when it's time for them to be parenting back at the home front. So I am proud that I was able to make Chief Petty Officer. I am very proud of my husband that he was able to promote to Senior Chief Petty Officer. But I think that that's a good thing to note, is that he did promote to Senior Chief Petty Officer at 18 years. I promoted to Chief Petty Officer in 14 years, and then retired at 24. I did that at higher tenure, couldn't go any farther. So just so that people take that into consideration when they're thinking about sacrifice, what needs to be done when you're raising a family in the military is just be prepared for that possibility. It doesn't mean that you can't do what you want to do and you don't, your dreams are possible. But just be realistic. I think being realistic is a good idea to do while you're in the Navy.
Okay, so you mentioned something that I never really even thought about, because it was never really my experience, but mill to mill relationships and career choices. Yeah, you think, oh, well, one person is going to be on shore duty and the other person is going to be out to sea, but you don't think about the actual career growth that you both have, because like you said, I mean, it's not like high school where you are or like, you know, just school in general, where you are in second grade and you all graduate together, and then you go to the next grade and you go, you know, to the next grade and so forth. It's not like that at all. Like, you have things that you can do with your current command. The opportunities that you have is different for growth. And I think that's so important to understand when you are in a male-to-male relationship. But something that I wanted to also ask is, how do you decide that you want to be in a male-to-male relationship? Because I'm just going to be honest, you know, a lot of us, we get to our commands and it's just like, I gotta say it because there's somebody, if people are gonna understand what I'm talking about, they say, oh, you're gonna get your boat boo, right? You're gonna get your or find this person that you like or whatever. I mean, reality is most likely, you know, if you are, I don't know, most likely you're gonna have people that you're interested in, right? And it's just like, how do you make that next move? I remember when I was on my one ship, and this young couple, they were like E3s. They decided that they wanted to get married, and then one of them had to leave the ship. And it's just like, well, how do you even make that decision to marry somebody who is in the military? It's cool that you guys both know your service. You guys both are doing the same thing, so you have that understanding. But I don't know, like, how do you decide to marry someone who's also doing the same service, and you know what it also entails? You know what I'm saying?
Yes and no. So I think it's important to note at this point that I've been married twice. So both were military. My first one was I was a little, you know, young, wasn't really dating very long enough to know this person. Ended up, you know, finding out what my mistakes were going to bring me for getting into that relationship so quickly, and then marrying so quickly without really thinking about it. And we would only be married for 8 years before we would divorce. Second one was again military. I think that is a result, though, of it's just part of the person you are. It depends on who you are. I'm a very quiet person. I usually am. I'm internal. I like to keep to myself. If you think about a person that keeps to themselves, and I'm in the Navy and that's all I do all the time, more than likely my relationships are only going to be people in the Navy. So the people that I'm likely going to make a relationship with or a connection with are military, period. That's exactly what happened with my current husband, is I made a connection with him. But I do have to say he's a more mature person, you know, than my previous. And the way that I felt about that is that we had goals that we wanted to meet, and we were able to encourage and motivate each other. And that's what I needed. That's what he needed. That's what I needed at that time in our lives. And it just went from there. It's never perfect. No one's going to say it's ever perfect. We've been through a lot of, you know, the whole cat fight, whatever you want to say, you know, we don't agree. But at the age of 46 and him being 44, you get to a place where, you know, you either cut those ties because you say you can't do that anymore, or you just say, you know, you come to an agreement and a compromise between each other, and you understand who's going to support, who's not. And I think those things, especially the supportive ability that you can have, is what keeps you united in that certain goal. Because you know that even if he's, you know, or your spouse is achieving, or you're achieving, the understanding is that you're achieving together. And so that has to be what is like what you want. Is not like you want to be the successful one and not them. It's you're both achieving one common goal together. And so it is just who you are. It's just depends on the person you are and what your relationships you're forming, and, you know, how your social groups are coming together. You don't really make, you don't make a conscious decision to marry somebody who's in the military. It's just how it goes.
That's perfect, because a lot of us, we feel guilty that we have this interest or we're drawn to someone who's also in the military too. I mean, it makes so much sense what you just said. So thank you for providing clarity to that. Because you want to be you want to be around and be involved with people who are like you, people who get you. My ex-husband now is also Navy. We went to boot camp together, but we never even like talk to each other. You know how you graduate boot camp, you go to A school, and you know each other. You might get online and talk to each other. I don't know how it was, when you graduated, but then we eventually, came back together after he actually left, and I was still in, and but I still had that interest in him. We both had same understandings and things like that, so it makes sense, and I appreciate you for sharing that. Okay, so my next question is there anything else that you wanted to share? I know you mentioned that you have 2 children, and then they both are diagnosed with ADHD and autism spectrum. Did you have to go through EFM at all?
Yes, actually, so that'll be the big topic of this whole thing, right? So EFMP actually became a rep twice for 2 different commands. I feel pretty comfortable with Exceptional Family Member Program. That's what EFMP stands for. Mm-hmm. So actually, my son, David, he is 18. He is diagnosed with ADHD. He also has autistic attributes. So it's actually stipulated in his diagnosis. That's important to note for people that end up getting a diagnosis for their children, is that if it's written down, that is what people will actually pay attention to. Not if it's by word of mouth, it has to be on a diagnosis, medical paperwork. My daughter is diagnosed autism spectrum disorder. She is actually nonverbal. That's what people call it, quote unquote, nonverbal. It doesn't mean that she doesn't speak. It means that her conversations, though, could be very simplistic. They may just be one word or several phrases. And that's how she understands how to communicate. But she is going to need therapy. That's what she gets in order to develop her ability to communicate at a level that everybody else around her can understand. Mm-hmm. So in EFMP, what I'm going to say is that the first thing that's going to happen is, don't feel bad that you're shocked. If you get a diagnosis for your children or somebody who is one of your dependents or anything like that, because it's not just children. Sometimes people find out I've seen a spouse get diagnosed and then they go, what's going on? First things to happen, especially with children, is I'm in denial. That's normal. It's okay. You'll get past that part. We all get that way first because we're like, did I do something wrong? Did something that we have in our genetics cause this to happen? Mm-hmm. Believe me, I already had a genetic mapping for myself and my son, and there's nothing to pick that up. So there's no real understanding yet of how that works. But EFMP was designed as a way for sailors to be able to focus on the mission. I like to just say it like that, without having to worry about, is my family member getting the support they need? Are they getting developmental resources that they have to get in order to do it? Medications, counseling, specialists, all those things come with actual different, needs. They're not like the routine thing that you get when you go down to Portsmouth Medical Hospital and you're like, hey, can I go be seen by family medical? It's not the same thing. When you do this, the paperwork is what everybody's first and foremost gets all overwhelmed about, but that is what I'm here for when I did the EFMP, is your EFMP rep is there on hand in order to give you that kind of guidance. Please bend into them in order to do it, because if they know their job like I know it, they should be able to run you through those 2 forms and tell you the difference and let you know exactly how the process is going to take place. There's no need to really talk about the process here, but what I do want to focus on is that there is a different type or a portion of Exceptional Family Member Program through TRICARE that people don't ever concentrate on, and they need to understand this, is that TRICARE Echo is another portion of EFMP that comes with it. You have to actually request it, though, through your Humana TRICARE and have some additional paperwork filled out just for that, but it's super simple. A lot of people, again, get very intimidated by the idea of doing the paperwork, and that's what stops them. Do not, I have to say that and stress it, do not hesitate to do it. There was a long time ago, a girl who actually was an EFMP rep, regional coordinator for the area. She said to me, if you are in doubt, fill out the paperwork anyway, because what's the worst thing that can do? The board goes through, the EFMP board goes through and they say, you are disapproved, you're approved. What does that mean? You have resources or you don't, and if you get the resources and say you just don't ever have to utilize them, at least they're there for you to use. I have oftentimes had people come to me who said, I am overwhelmed. I have like a child, or I have an older who's violent maybe, or they are acting out, that they have a lot of different disruptions that they do at home, both at work and everything. This too shall pass. I know it sounds really, sort of like, oh, well, everybody says that. No, it really will pass. It is a journey, though. I call my kids Fire and Ice, and Fire and Ice are a journey for me. They both have their own different personalities. They both have their different challenges, and they challenge me and my family every single day. But they also come with amazing, wonderful, fact personalities. They can be the sweetest people in the world. Everybody loves their kids. I love mine just like anybody else's kids. It's just that from another perspective, people looking outside in might look at us and go, why does she behave that way? Or why is she stimming? This is stimming. Mm-hmm. Or why is he maybe saying something out of the blue and it doesn't make any sense? Or they may not notice anything at all. But for me, what's also good to identify is that those parents understand their people too. They do go through stresses that they're not sharing with the rest of the world. And it is important to also note that as the parent, as the people that are the caregivers for the people that need us like that, it is very important to do self-help or self-care. Mm-hmm. Okay, because a lot of people forget themselves when they go through the processes of doing EFMP, caring, doing TRICARE Echo, taking them to these appointments, getting the refills, taking them to the counseling, going to see the dean, you can see where I'm going. This is all the stuff I've had to do throughout my entire career with my kids. At the end of the day, what do you do here? Like, who cares about mom and dad? Nobody cares about mom and dad more than you care about yourself. So getting yourself away, getting a break, talking with your best friends, reaching out to your mom, your parents, somebody you trust, maybe just getting involved in social, groups, keeping your life active positively for yourself. I do tea, for instance. I love doing tea parties and like that kind of stuff. It's just my thing. It keeps me active and helps my mind to just sort of like rest for a while before I have to tackle all the new issues and problems and things that might be coming in my inbox or whatever when I've got to do it. So I just want to let you know, for the rest of your group who's watching this, is so important to understand. Please always don't feel like you can't get the help you need for your kids, for your family, and for yourself. You're not lost. You're not alone. There are a lot of us out here that can help you. I'm retired. Please, I'm always looking for putting myself out there and saying, please, I can tell you what to do and how to do it. So
yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned so many things, but one thing that keeps coming up to my mind is, well, how do I tell my chain of command? So can you help with that?
Yes, very easy. Not easy for the person in the moment, because a lot of people feel embarrassed in that moment. Mm-hmm. First off, you're going to take all that embarrassment and you're going to throw it out the door, because you're going to bring in paperwork. You're going to go to your chain of command, whoever is in your chain of command that you feel most comfortable with. I know that some people say, well, my chief needs to know, my LPO needs to know. No, in the end, really the person that needs to know is your commanding officer, but it would validate your argument and make you look a lot more serious about what your goal is. If you started with the chain of command, whether it's your chief or your first class petty officer, whichever one you want to start with. And that means that the EFMP paperwork, you do not have to share that part with them. No, not at all. You do your EFMP paperwork, you submit that through a whole nother rep, and nobody really ever sees that happen. I'm just going to tell you that. But because I know what you're probably talking about is when the childcare needs come up and everything. And everybody's going to go to the family care plan. And I'm going to tell you right now that family care plan doesn't have anywhere on it where it says, my child is diagnosed and needs this kind of stuff and that. That's not what the family care plan is for. What it needs to be understood, though, from the rest of the team is that you are starting a journey to get the right resources and everything in place in order to do it. And that takes time. And that you're working with your EFMP rep, if that's what they need to know in order to do it, and that those things will come, but it takes 4 to 6 weeks for an EFMP board to make a determination of what resources you're going to get. In the meantime, childcare has been a huge issue in all the military, not just Navy, that's everywhere. And what I can tell you is that you want to start early. I can't give you any good news about that. There's that's going to come with TRICARE Echo, and come talk to me if you want to talk about how that kind of care can come in play with TRICARE Echo. But that's another topic entirely. But feel like you share the information with your chain of command that you wish to share.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Let's see. Do you have any final parts that you want to share, or final points that you want to share?
No, not really. Just saying, thank you for your service. Thank you for everybody out there who's continuing to do what we all have been doing all along, and you're staying there and actually shaping the rest of the Navy into the military into what it is going to be in the future. You do a more tougher job than I think you realize. And when you retire, or when you just make that decision to separate, because that's okay as well, you're going to find out, you're never wasting your time. You did a lot of things. Everybody out there has done everything that they could have needed to do, and everything to make a difference. You have been making a difference. Yeah. Everyone out there does make a difference.
Okay. And then my last question is, what is a fun fact about your specific experience in the military?
Okay. Fun fact. My actual nickname at camp was called G.I. Jane. And the reason why it was called G.I. Jane was because when I went through boot camp, I actually broke my left foot, clean break, right into the bone from stress fractures during our physical training test number 2. So that's the second one. I did not want to get asthma. I don't know anybody in boot camp who wants to get asthma, because that means you start all over again. That clock starts. I don't want to do it. So I would sneak out ice from the galley. I would numb it till I couldn't feel it no more. I just kept going through all the activities. Literally, no one knew I had a broken foot that whole time. I kind of just faked it till I made it. During battle stations, which doesn't exist the same way today, we actually run through battle stations. I don't think they do that anymore. I've heard it's all on that ship. So battle stations, running all through heat condition 5, black flag all over the place, and I've got a broken foot, right? So when I actually got to the finish line, I had a great support group of fellow recruits with me. They pushed me to the end. I did make it through it, and when we finally got back to our ship, that's what we call it then, is the RDCs noticed. They were like, "Oh, you got a broken foot?" And I remember my RDC was crying because she was like the toughest broad I've ever known, and she just couldn't believe I just managed to get through there. So I got a cast on. I actually stayed in boot camp for probably another extra 3 months. Wow. Which is funny to people, because they're always like, "Why are you going to be at boot camp?" I said, because the guy said I couldn't cross the street to go to A school until I got out of my. So then I was named G.I. Jane for that whole thing. But I can tell you, I'm not the G.I. Jane. There was another girl who popped her hip right out, and then she pushed it right back in. So,
Wow. That is so crazy. Well, thank you so much, Chief Beasy, for coming on here and sharing what so many people need to understand. Like, you can have a successful marriage in the military with another, sailor, and you can take care of your family, even if your family has these different things going on health-wise. Like, things will be okay, and there are ways that the military will support you. A lot of us, we think, oh, well, we got to leave. But if we take our time to learn about these things and be unafraid to speak up, so people can give us the proper help, we'll be okay. For those of you who are, transitioning, trying to stay in, there are a lot of solutions. I know for me, I actually went on Hums orders. My mom, she got sick. She has something called sarcoidosis, and she she was coughing a whole lot, and there were times where she would cough so much that she would literally like almost drive off the road. So, and then there's other things going on with that too. And she has my two little sisters, and thankfully the Navy allowed me to go and help to take care of my my mom and my little sisters. One of my little sisters has cerebral palsy, so she had physical therapy like once or twice a week. And of course, my mom has to work still, and so I never knew that there was something called Hums duty. All I knew was that I was afraid, like I didn't want my family to have to suffer and all of these things. And I'm so grateful that I found out about Hums to help to take care of my own family. Crazy thing, she's not even on my she's not my dependent or anything like that. They just do that so that we can make sure that we're able to really do our jobs. And if there's anything that I want to say thank you to the Navy for, it is that allowing me to keep my job and to go and take care of my family. And so again, Chief Beezy, thank you so much for coming on here, and we will chat later.